Just a disclaimer that I am not intentionally insulting these YouTubers or their personal philosophies. I'm more interested in armchair theorizing than passing judgment. So in this video, I will be critiquing, which is not the same as criticizing. Also, all the videos that I'm going to be talking about had incredibly amazing B-roll, very aesthetically pleasing, and I'm very jealous. So I've tried to make my equivalent, which is just me putting filters over me talking. So enjoy that. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Cadology, and on this channel you'll find me just talking about anything and everything that I want to. So today I'm going to be talking about the I don't dream of Labour sort of trend that has emerged on a particular side of YouTube, especially in relation to what I think is very much aligned to it, which is the how to start a YouTube channel or why you should start a YouTube channel in 2021, that sort of thing. I think they are different, but nonetheless have similarities that are very important to actually acknowledge. Just before we think about that, I think it's important to distinguish between what has been going on. Recently, since the beginning of the pandemic, individuals have been working increasingly remotely and from home. Remote working has enabled many people to see that working in an office is not as necessary as it presumably was. On the other hand, work in our modern societies is increasingly invading what was considered to be a very sacred, private domain, your personal life. Microsoft Teams, for instance, makes it impossible for me to come home from my shift and just be with myself doing what I want to do. I am increasingly invaded and completely swarmed in emails and messages and notifications and updates. According to the corporation, this is a good thing because it keeps me informed and updated on what is going on. On the other hand, and what really happens, is that I have absolutely no way of escaping my job, continually being within the back of my mind and on my phone, and I'm just a cashier in a superstore. So recently, many videos have been uploaded to YouTube featuring this phrase, I don't dream of Labour, or I no longer dream of Labour. I believe much insight can be found in merely looking at what the words composing that phrase mean. The nominative pronoun I is very important here. I represents and symbolises in our society and culture the individual, that is you, and you as being at the centre not just of this phrase but of life. What is symbolic is what is generally agreed to be the increasing place of the individual, not just within but compared to and over society or the collective. Self-help, self-care, self-love, the individual with their social media accounts. Everything is about you, and that is the individualistic context in which we find ourselves in, complemented by an economic system which places the individual at the core of all decision-making. What lies behind the contraction don't is an alternative. A do or a do not. There is an either or, which infers a kind of choice or decision. You can choose to do or not to do. In this comes choice or agency. There is more than one option at your disposal. When we think of the verb to dream, and in this context, in this phrase, it is used as a verb, dream is the idea that you are doing something, and what you are doing is something that is aspirational. As a noun, it refers to a cherished aspiration, an idealizing. When Martin Luther King proclaimed, "I have a dream," he had a vision of something better, something greater to aspire toward, an ideal. I think it's important for my argument here to also relate dream to utopia or utopian thinking, the idea of an alternative or something better. Labour is a little more complex and is something that I will actually get into later, so for now hold off. But what I think can be shown just by what I have said in defining the "I don't dream of" part of this phrase is that you, the individual, are paramount, and that you have a choice, you have agency. And due to this agency, you are able to project yourself idealistically into an alternative reality or prospects for yourself. You are able to be ambitious. You are able to determine where your ambition is directed toward. And noticeably, this idealizing of projecting yourself into a future of your own making does not include labor in the way that we see it today. The dream job is a capitalist phenomena. It is the idea that happiness can be found in living the ultimate capitalist life, which is to work, work, work. In sum, it is the idea that your job can be an end in itself to your fulfillment, as opposed to merely doing your job as a means toward some end. Namely, the end of being able to pursue expensive hobbies or being able to afford a mortgage or two. If one morning you wake up and you find that you are the only human being left on earth, you would still go into your office, even if nobody was there, and do the exact same thing as you had done when there were 300 odd people in the office, because your job is your dream. It is that which you love. It is that which gives you purpose, which gives you fulfillment and meaning. You will do it irrespective of whether there's an audience there or not, whether there is a financial reward or not. It is something that motivates you in and of itself. The popularity of some of these videos says a lot about how many people in our generation are feeling. When talking about the leftist anti-labor movement, I will be referring to the videos by creators such as Lynette Adkins, Catherart, and Anetinuk. Apologies for my pronunciation. What they all have in common is their generational circumstance. They are all college level educated, and they have all worked in, or I believe still work in, specialist white collar training and professions. What makes them leftist is what and where their disillusionment with the status quo, the structuring of our current society, takes them, which is to the need to actively redistribute wealth and reconstruct society so that nobody has to work their life away at something which gives them minimal fulfillment. Okay, this is not to say that they want to completely overhaul society or restructure it fundamentally. If it's not about a complete overhaul of the system, it is at least about the idea of playing the system's game to your advantage. You are coerced from birth to play this game within our economic and social system. You are expected to aspire toward a dream job and to really believe that that job is going to provide you with the fulfillment, satisfaction, and meaning that you also desire from life. Another thing which characterizes and brings together these leftist anti-labor YouTubers is an emphasis on inter-class solidarity. What is meant by this, at least based on what these YouTubers are presenting of their interpretation of it, is that it is the responsibility and it is important to them that they uplift the other classes, that they uplift those who are at a disadvantage relative to themselves. In this is this idea that they have been sold a lie. In the realization that they have been sold a lie, there is then an emphasis on care over profit, on prioritizing and promoting a care economy and system of living, a caring society, as opposed to one that is centered around merely the making of profit and the exploitation of individuals and of the environment to do so. As careers increasingly take over every facet of an individual's life, there is no room to, in fact, find happiness and pleasure in those things which would be considered hobbies. Those things in themselves need to be capitalized. Capitalism, as they claim, infiltrates every aspect of their existence. It is not enough even to just have a hobby. You can't have a hobby without it bringing in some gain. The free market has invaded every facet of existence. On that point, I do agree with them. Another thing which they have in common is an emphasis on a passive and/or multiple income streams, which means that less working hours are possible, that money is created which allows passions and interests to be pursued free of guilt that you are not working or earning actively when doing these things, and that eventually this can be advocated and seen as a viable way of living, contrary to the dream job myth for not just these individual YouTubers, but for everyone. This current system is not benefiting them. It's also not benefiting anybody else. It doesn't end when they have found their happiness and their fulfillment in their own individual lives. It only ends when they are able to then export that to other individuals, when other individuals are themselves able to live a life in which the redistribution of wealth, of equity, and of meritocracy are realized. That is what makes us leftist, in that there is an outcome which is based on and centered around collectivism. Ultimately, it brings society back to the foe. It substitutes individualism with society.
I am making a little over a couple $1,000s a month from making videos that take me no more than 10 hours a week to make. You need to start a channel.
On the apolitical and liberal side, I have watched YouTubers such as Kelly Stamps, Lana Blakely, Jade Dana Wangza, and Catherine Manning. But I'm mainly interested in looking at Kelly Stamps and Jade.
Life is just too expensive, so we need to create multiple streams of income. I created a stream of income, well, 2 streams of income from YouTube. One from ad revenue every month and one from sponsorships.
On this side of the spectrum, there's this notion that if you start a YouTube channel, you can make it as big as said creator. That if you put in the hours, if you put in the work, if you hustle, if you learn about the algorithm, if you actually want it, you can do it, and you can become the next Kelly Stamps. She definitely has inspired, I would say, thousands of individuals, based on her comment section at least, to start their own YouTube channels. I say that Kelly and Jade are apolitical/liberal because they subscribe to the same notion of not having a dream job, or ultimately seeing their hobbies as passions rather than as means of making their primary form of income. Their emphasis is on more so of a you problem, as Kelly Stamps put it.
But unfortunately, many of you have noted underneath my video how I save money at 23 that, quote, girl, most of us don't even earn $2,000 a month. That sounds like a you problem. Anything is possible if you put your mind to it. It just won't be comfortable. You think you're too good to learn a trade? Okay, go to college. Oh, you don't want to go to school, it's too expensive? Okay. Provide a service, start a business, or better, start a YouTube channel. That's the point of this video.
If you're feeling like nothing you're doing is working and you're just trying to build a company or a YouTube channel and it's just not getting views, I hope this video can help you see that I struggle with it too, and we're in this together, B.
What these YouTubers tend to have in common is that they are very much independent women. They are entrepreneurs whose entrepreneurial pursuits started primarily with YouTube, and especially with seeing YouTube as a business from the get-go. and doing it with the objective of making money.
I feel like it can be a slippery slope of doing it for yourself and then doing it for others. So I think it's just so important to understand why you, just you, want to make money. My answer is I love telling stories and working with creative people. So I want to make money so I can live my life in California and pay my team that works in my company. I just love working with creative people. That's why I have a videographer and editor, just because it's my favorite thing to do. So money is fuel for me to do these things. But before, if you asked me last year, I would probably just want to make money just to be cool with my friends that are millionaires, right? So I think it's just so important to understand that, because it will save you so much headache, because there's going to be a time where you don't ever feel successful enough because you're trying to make money for someone else.
The vibe of these videos seem to be more about changing your lifestyle so that you can start to live your most meaningful life, insofar as your job, the job that you've believed until now has been offering you the most fulfillment and should be offering you the meaning, the happiness, the peace and the joy which it was promised to, is no longer able to do so. So how do the left and liberal or apolitical anti-Labour advocates differ from one another? The videos that have noticeably been trending now have been ones which have a very political message behind them, and those are the leftist I Don't Dream of Labour videos that have been appearing and popping up everywhere lately. On the one hand, you have a very conscious, particularly class conscious and societal conscious fragment of this trend. On the other side, you have a very selfish, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, I mean that merely as being selfish rather than selfless, if that makes sense, and who care about making money and the hustle, as it were, or not even the hustle in as much as merely not dreaming of labour, but finding passive streams of income which then support you living your hobbies, enjoying your life, and not feeling guilty about buying $6,000 worth of Chanel boots, for instance. So both don't believe in the dream job. Your job then isn't your dream, it isn't the thing that makes you happy or fulfilled. If you wake up one morning and are the only person on earth, you're not going to go to your 9-to-5 corporate job. You're not going to do your side hustle even. You're going to do the thing which you love to do most, which gives you passion, whether that be painting or surfing or learning how to fly airplanes. You're going to do that. Hi, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Anyway, I wanted to interrupt in order to introduce part 2, which is going to be me being far more critical. Just want to make it clear that I don't have a political position. I'm very disillusioned with just existence, so I will be critiquing both of them with the same sort of passion. Think about when you go on a date. Today, why do you go on a date? Well, you largely go on a date because you found somebody on Hinge or on Bumble or on OkCupid or on Plenty of Fish. Why have you found this person? Well, it wasn't just by chance. It was based on you making a profile and having all of that profile analyzed in its absolute minuscule detail by an algorithmic method, by people at a desk in a company trying to make money. And in this sense, it is not just about trying to find love. This is all about neoliberalism completely infiltrating into an area of life which otherwise had nothing to do with the running of capitalism, namely into the prospect of creating a family and finding love. This is not to say that love isn't about money or that marriage hasn't been about money and the exchange of bodies, notably female bodies. What this is saying is that for the first time in human history, markets and particularly free market economic models which support and are dominated by mega corporations are determining who you are going to potentially spend the rest of your life with. The paradox is that we are presented with allegedly having more choice. A dating app shows you a plethora of potential mates, how modern dating is in fact liberating and making love something more genuine and real. On the other side, however, which is here comes the contradiction in my opinion, it doesn't represent more choice. The thing about markets is that there is never an end, there is never satisfaction, there can't ever be satisfaction, particularly under a neoliberal mindset. There is always a potentially better partner, a potentially better mate than the one that you have currently chosen. Why I like to use the example of dating apps and dating in the modern age is because of the need to really define your terms. I think this is a perfect example of distinguishing between capitalism and neoliberalism on the one hand. And what I find very problematic about these leftist anti-labor advocates is that they do not distinguish between their terms, and they do not distinguish between capitalism on the one hand and the neoliberal economy on the other hand. We exist currently in a neoliberal economic free market fundamentalist society and context. That is what the problem is, not capitalism. In the Western world, liberalism has been the default ideology for capitalists to adopt since the early 20th century. Neoliberalism, on the other hand, is an extensive, politicized set of beliefs which emerged in the 1980s under the governments of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. The central neoliberal belief is that only by maximizing the power, the freedom, and the profits of finance capitalists can we maximize human flourishing for everyone. From this emerged some of the central ideas of our time: decentralization, minimal state intervention and less dictated by the market, the marketization of people, jobs, and services, market bureaucracy over all, and market capital before people and before their care and well-being. Capitalism is about human interactions of exchange. It originates from this idea, in anthropology at least, of gift giving, the exchange of gifts. It's not mere coincidence that when somebody gives you a gift, you feel obliged to return the favor, whether it be with another gift or with thanks and showing appreciation, that sort of thing. It is what really, allegedly and according to the theory, makes up human relations. Online dating, however, brings mass corporations and large corporate interests into that very intimate exchange relationship between you and a potential mate or mates. A consequence of this is that the entire finding a partner or partners is commodified. You yourself are turned into a commodity. It's pure free market theory. You make risks, you take chances, you rationalize things, or rather make irrational decisions. For instance, men are more likely on dating apps to message numerous women in order to increase their chances of getting a response. There's rejection, there's calculation, there's winners and there are losers. It's very much a marketplace of love. In this, online dating is very much a product of, and has very much been infiltrated with, the demands of market fundamentalism, and is a neoliberal phenomena, as opposed to a merely capitalist one. Firstly, Adam Smith did not think that selfishness was a virtue, and selfishness is something that is very much associated with what these YouTubers and what I think the generic idea of capitalism conflates. This notion that being a capitalist means being selfish, thinking of yourself as an individual in this world, pursuing profit and playing the game of supply and demand to your advantage. We are all capitalists, and we always have been, since the beginning of time. Smith just put a name to a practice of human interaction that we have always done. The reason I say that we are all capitalists is very much because of Smith and because of what he said. For Smith, the crucial linking idea is that of the continuous exchange that occurs in all human interaction. This may be the exchange of goods and services in markets, but it can also be the exchange of meanings in language and in other forms of communication. And it can be the exchange of regard or esteem that, in Smith's view, underlies the formation of moral and social norms in society. Capitalism is used by these influencers in order to advance their arguments, but it is never defined and it is never clearly explained to their audiences what is actually meant. You need to start with definitions before you can provide solutions.
I really want to emphasize that capitalism is, as the major economic model in which we run today, is really reaching its last few stages, and I find this to be a scary thing, but also a really pivotal moment in which now we can start to build interclass solidarity and to start to empower one another.
Now, interclass solidarity is a tricky thing. Often it implies something that I would characterize as being quite utopian. Solidarity is difficult because it seems to imply that there can be equality among a large group of people without one or two standing out as a leader and therefore becoming more powerful and having more influence than everybody else. For instance, class can refer to a number of things. Integrating or demolishing one form of class inequality does not then do the same for other forms of class inequality. Take the Bolsheviks, for example. Vladimir Lenin was not only a revolutionary, but a political theorist and intellectual. The creation of a classless society meant the abolition of social class. What it did not mean was the abolition of a status class, an intellectual class relatively better educated and thus at the forefront of the very ideas which make societies and which make history. The status class, consisting of key Bolsheviks, is in stark opposition to the very thing they were allegedly trying to do, and the subsequent suffering of the Soviet proletariat is evidence of this. These leftist anti-labor advocates are noticeably very well educated. It is not merely their social class, but also their status class, which I think comes into conflict with their more than honorable objectives and advice to their viewers. Ideology has always been defined by the educated. Marx, a bougie dude who went on long strolls reciting Shakespeare by heart and leeching a living off his bestie Friedrich Engels, is cheered as a martyr of the downtrodden and penniless. Make of that what you will.
What's the solution? Is the only solution to this experience, is the only solution to escaping this system and freeing ourselves, is the only solution starting a YouTube channel or starting a business or monetizing your passion and fighting capitalism with capitalism?
And I'm just saying, when they index the happiest countries in the world, and I don't know exactly what the index is based on, so maybe it's flawed and corrupt too, but they tend to be countries like Denmark where work is just downplayed in your identity so much more. Call me loony, but I think it's very plausible that their happiness index and their distance from their jobs as their identity is linked. That does not sound unbelievable to me.
For instance, all of these countries listed as the least and most happiest countries in the world are capitalist countries. Nordic countries are very capitalist, but they are the least neoliberal. They have not done away with the welfare state, as most neoliberal free markets have done, in line with deregulation and minimal state intervention. Importantly, Nordic countries were economically and socially prosperous before building their welfare state models. Those productive economies, generating good incomes for their workers, allowed Nordic governments to raise the tax revenue needed to pay for the social benefits. It was not the government benefits that created wealth, but wealth that allowed the luxury of such generous government programs.
I mentioned in the last video that I currently work on negotiating contracts, pitching creators, and working with the legal team. And that work is not necessarily the most fun. So I'm working on outsourcing this a little bit better. X8 is my media company. We're an influencer agency. And the goal is for me to generate more revenue in X8 so I can have more time. And this revenue I can use to hire people and keep growing, like I mentioned in the beginning, so I can have more time. Like, the key is for me to have enough time to make art and just spend time being myself and not worry about project to project.
But once you build some kind of foundation for yourself, what can you do with your time and your resources and your money to create a world in which everyone can live this dream world? If you have money, if you make money, how can you give that money to other people? I know for me, like I've always had a goal of investing in real estate so I can give people access to housing, right? Imagine if people who currently own real estate decide to cut their profits and provide people with cheaper housing or even free housing. That's a possibility, but we just don't see it because we've been brought up to believe that we all have to be selfish and keep as much as we can in our little nugget of the world. It's like we're little chipmunks collecting as much nuts as we can.
This idea of giving back, of putting your money back into society, into the community, into projects and into means in which individuals can benefit is all well and good in theory, but in reality it is another form of exchange. It is, in my opinion, capitalist by definition. It is a human interaction, there's exchange. Lynette is investing in real estate, and that real estate is going to be used in order to provide more affordable housing for X, Y, and Z disadvantaged individuals. That's all well and good, but there is inevitably a power dynamic, there is inevitably that exchange relationship, that expectation, that contract, if you will, which makes it a capitalistic enterprise. There was a comment left on Elise Capel's video, her recent video essay talking about this topic, and I found it very interesting and very relevant to a critique of interclass solidarity.
So to circle back to those people who were saying, I'm stuck working minimum wage, I don't know how to create side income, how do I create another stream of income? Just start a YouTube channel. It is easy, it is set up to be easy. It is free 99.
My main message in this whole video is not to call people out or to claim that what they envisage, namely, for instance, on the left, a more equal and fair society, less exploitation, exposing the lies which they've been told throughout their childhood and younger years. It is not in order to claim that they are wrong in what they say in order to create a sense of hopelessness. It's more so to identify what I am very wary and critical of what they are all saying, which is that we can all live the life which they see for themselves and which they present to us through 10-minute long videos on their YouTube channels. Their YouTube channels are a success purely because there are individuals who do not have what they have and consume what they put out. The passive income solution, or detachment from work resolution, which is offered by the leftists and apolitical or liberal anti-labor advocates, is, in my opinion, just as harmful. In failing to appreciate the nuance provided by defining and therefore being able to distinguish between terms, viable and convincing solutions cannot be found. Their solutions are inevitably solutions which remain in the market economy, merely offloading the issues onto others. Outsourcing is the perfect example of offloading the burden onto others as opposed to offloading the market itself and its complementary market mentality. Being a YouTuber, for example, necessarily means being an advocate for the dominance of finance capitalists over our lives. The 40k per month that Kelly makes, for instance, is so because other people who may make videos just as or even better than hers are not favored by the finance capitalist's most loyal subject, which is the algorithm. we can all have it all is just as big a lie as the one these YouTubers are trying to expose. Kelly monopolizes her niche, which is not to say that she isn't incredibly talented. Somebody or a few bodies always dominate a niche on this platform. And whilst you are reaping the long-term benefits of dominating or being more successful in a niche, accumulating views and therefore income, labor is being outsourced to viewers, to editors, to managers, patrons, to those behind sponsorship deals, which includes the labor going into making and processing the raw materials which are needed to make that business which sponsors you a business able to do so in the first place. These deals and perks are also dominated by a few, as is everything in the neoliberal marketplace. If we all have it all, the market making passive and alternative income streams possible would no longer be neoliberal. There is an inevitable trade-off. If we all became Kelly Stamps, there would be no Kelly Stamps. If we all became Catherart, there would be no Catherart. On the apolitical or liberal side, failure is perceived as a you problem, which is a very neoliberal belief. On the leftist side, failure is perceived as the fault of capitalism. As a result, everything is just outsourced, the problem merely transferred to history's most loyal class, the invisible underclass. This underclass is the reason why I see altruistic outsourcing as merely a face-saving endeavor. Don't get me wrong, I think these YouTubers believe what they say and advocate. I just don't think they know to the full extent what it is they are advocating and criticizing. On the left, this becomes a savior complex. On the apolitical liberal side, it becomes either personal consultancy, life advice, or a lifestyle glow-up. In sum, trends such as these are merely trends because they have been marketed as such, and those at the front of the trend reap the kind of benefits which creates passive and multiple incomes, and which is essentially neoliberal. What distinguishing between capitalism and neoliberalism has demonstrated to me at least is that work and labor isn't the problem in as much as the pervasiveness of the liberal market into areas of life that should be considered no market go zones. School, university, dating, and our future hopes and dreams, our quality of life, etc. Capitalism has never historically invaded these domains with as negative a force as the ideologies, the religious doctrines or sets of beliefs surrounding a capitalist context and molding it into the world we see today. The problem then is the free market economy taking privatization and the dominance of finance capitalists over all other capitalists to a whole other level. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video interesting and insightful. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with me. Feel free to like or dislike. Yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you so much also for subscribing and for the support that I've seen in lots of my videos. I really do appreciate it. And thank you, and I will see you in the next one.